Hello and welcome back to Genesis Designs and Modelcraft, and welcome back to Chatterbox. It's been a few weeks since I did one, and I decided to do a quick one today because I wanted to address a few of the comments on my newer Modelling for Beginners series about the Airfix Mustang. There's been a couple of comments and a couple of questions that I thought were worthy of a little bit of feedback. So first and foremost, I'll just have a quick sip of my still warm coffee. Yeti for the win yet again. Firstly, thank you for all the nice comments that so many of you left about Seahorse here. It's one I did quite a lot of years ago. I did it for a Splash Sig display. And it's only ever been seen in public that one time at Telford Weekend several years ago now, and it was a subject of some amusement between us at how many people were taken in by it and thought that there actually was a P-51 float plane. But no, I made it up. Anyway, that's there as a bit of eye candy. I have for once in my life made notes. Never normally do it, but I wouldn't have remembered all the questions otherwise. So, first off, I want to talk about a point raised by Penny's Pit Stop. Why did I buy aftermarket for this build at all? And why did I buy the particular things that I did in preference to other things? This being for the Modelling for Beginners build, obviously. So I bought the Edward Space 3D instrument panel set and some brass and wheels for it. Well, why did I get it? The reason mainly is because quite a few people in the comments previous to deciding on that build pointed out that they'd quite like to see a little bit of aftermarket used. Another reason was just to lift the difficulty level up a touch from the original build of the 172nd Mosquito. And I think it's something that it's such a normal part of every build nowadays that we use aftermarket. Pretty much everybody does it pretty much most of the time, it seems. But it's also something that provides quite a lot of trepidation for less experienced modellers. People like myself take it absolutely for granted that they can go buy a resin set or a photo etch set and make it work. And that's not the case for everybody. And I kind of just wanted to demystify the use of aftermarket a little bit and just use some very simple sets on this build. The reason that I picked the Edward stuff over other available aftermarket, well, the reason I picked the space decals is because I've not used them before. I have used the Quinta. I've not yet used Red Fox. But I hadn't used the Edward, and I just wanted to see how they were, how they compared, and what they come out like, honestly. It's only the second time I've used 3D decals myself, so it's a voyage of discovery for me as well. I don't necessarily prefer them to etch, but I think in smaller scales like 48th, they actually can be quite good, and they're certainly easier to use than etch, so I felt like they fitted into the premise of the more Modelling for Beginners series really well. And the brass and wheels I chose because in my experience they are just the best, honestly. They always pretty much seem to fit with very minimal effort. They're a really good product straight out of their box, and they're also very reasonably priced as resin wheels go. So that's why I picked brass and wheels rather than any of the others. Now, Tony Davey, 4171, didn't ask a question but made a comment that amused me. He had been following along with the build, but unfortunately for him, he chose to use the ICM kit. Needless to say, he scrapped that idea and an Airfix one is on the way. I just wanted to quickly mention the ICM kit because if one was looking for a Mustang kit to build in 48th, it's reasonable to expect that the ICM kit might pop up, and it seems very reasonably priced. And it is very reasonably priced. But there's a price to pay for that reasonable price. It's actually a kind of a bad copy of the Tamiya kit. So in essence, if you can get the thing together, it does look pretty good. I did build one ages ago. I did finish it, and it does look nice if you manage to get it past the finish line. But it's hard work, very, very poorly moulded and all that good stuff. So beware of the ICM kit, and please, as a secondary point, don't judge ICM on that kit, or indeed the Spitfire 9 of similar vintage, because they have come a very long way since those kits were available on the market. Next we've got Ramen Ron, excellent YouTube handle, questioned why use XF85 as opposed to XF1 when painting black parts. He claimed to know the answer to the question, but included it because he felt it was a valid query that newer models might raise, and I agree actually. And it's just another case of that thing where I do things because I do them, and I take it for granted that everyone understands why I do it, and I have to remember everyone doesn't. So I'm sorry about that if you were wondering. XF85 then, Tamiya. Rubber black, I think the name. Yeah, rubber black. Why XF85 and not XF1 flat black? They are both black. Well, there you go. There's a very minimal difference in tone, but hopefully it's actually obvious that the 85 is just a little bit less black than XF1. It's a little bit grayer. And the reason I use it is because it's less stark, basically. You can talk about scale effect and all that sort of thing if you want. I won't, because I don't really agree with the concept of it. But what I do agree with is that straight blackety black is very, very stark on a scale model sometimes, especially when it's put next to, I don't know, white, like you would in an ID band. And that slightly off black that you get with XF85, and I think all the paint manufacturers have a similar thing going on where they've got a slightly less black option. It just makes it a bit less harsh on the eye, basically. That's why I use it, but truthfully it has become a habit to use it rather than XF1. The other very minor advantage with XF85 or similar is that if you then choose to use a black wash, it does actually have some effect. You can see it a little bit. So that's why I use XF85 rather than XF1. Then next up was Les GL, who asked, is it possible to add the tail wheel strut after completion of the model to avoid breaking it? Yes, it very much is. Let me grab the instruction booklet. I did not do this because I'm trying to, as I said at the beginning, kind of stick to the instructions by and large to make it easier for people to follow along. So the tail wheel strut is supposed to be added at step 17 to the tail wheel bay, and it fits into the model by use of these two small sort of pegs on the side which go into holes on each side of the tail wheel bay, and then this more substantial peg which pops up through the roof. It would be very, very easy to modify this part to fit it after construction to save yourself the worry of knocking it off by trimming down the two mounting lugs on the sides such that you can insert the thing from the bottom. You would have to rely on a little bit of glue in this position, but obviously that's not an issue. And then you could fit it just like you will with the main gear legs and things like that after the painting's done, and there's very much less risk of knocking it off. So yes, it's very much possible. Next up, a comment, not really a question but an observation from Kent Barnes. He was interested in my use of superglue to attach the fuselage halves together, but is concerned from his own point of view as to whether that may be more brittle than the similar joint would be with plastic cement. I can't do any science on that, but in, again, my experience of using superglue as a major construction adhesive, and we're talking many years actually now that I've been doing this, I have had no issues with it. Conversely, I have had issues with proper plastic cement failing after time. I bought a somewhat built kit from someone. It'd been sat for a few years and found that all over the place the construction seams were failing because the glue wasn't working anymore, and that was normal liquid cement, which does fail over time. The Superglue, in my experience, does not. But the issue you will have with Superglue, if you're not careful, is that you can split the joint quite easily yourself if you're a bit rough. The shear strength of Superglue is minimal, so if you for example, handle the model too roughly, squeeze it, things like that, it is quite possible to pop the joint open yourself. But I've never had it happen, through time or just general degradation. So I don't think it's any worse. It's probably better, but I don't have any scientific sort of blah to back that up. It's just my actual own personal experience. And he also wondered where to get micro brushes. They are handy little things and they're not something you see everywhere. I got these from little cars, which I don't believe exist anymore, but most of the better sort of model shops will have these hidden away somewhere. The sort of the tool places and what have you will have these, but if you just search for micro brushes online, I suspect they'll come up very, very easily. Like so. Micro brush applicator, Amazon, 200 off, £3.99. I'll stick a link in the description if I remember, but there you got Scale Model Shop, Amazon again. So yeah, Google micro brush applicator to find your best local stockist for micro brushes. Next we've got, and finally actually, last but not least, we've got Zach Lewis, yes, Zach Lewis 342. My apologies. Why? He wondered why the seemingly silly decision to provide separate tail parts when they don't fit properly. Why aren't they moulded in? It's actually very simple. It's just Airfix, and they're not the only ones that do it. Trying to get the most out of the least moulding. The model I'm doing, let's move Splash Stang out of the way, is of the earlier P51D variant with the filletless tail. So the later ones, let's grab the main one here. If you look at the fin, it has this large fillet added here, as opposed to none here. And this is something they did later on. I've got a feeling the earlier B&C models also had filletless and filleted versions available, but I could be wrong. I'm not a Mustang expert. By moulding the tail fin separately the way they have, Airfix have provided the option for themselves to mould different fin pieces to satisfy the different variants of the aircraft without having to retool the full fuselage half, basically. Most manufacturers will do this. They will provide inserts for different variants rather than retooling whole portions of the airframe. I think one of the standout companies that don't do that are Edward, that they'll tend to retool a whole section rather than adding inserts and what have you. If the inserts or the separate parts fit properly, it's not an issue. In my case they didn't fit great, but I got there in the end. I've had feedback from others that say theirs fitted together fine, and yet further people have had similar issues that I did. As an aside, this is where my modelling for beginners Mustang is at right now. I'm several episodes ahead of what you're seeing on the channel. I'm getting well into the paint going on, and it is starting to look pretty cool. So with all of that said then, I just need to give you a quick couple of messages, things going on. First off, this, some may remember, was reviewed. I'll try and remember to link this as well. I did an inbox review of this ICM set. This is the English Patient set includes an entire tiger moth and stearman in 1/32 scale. As you can see, there's a tiger moth and a stearman in here, and the retail price for this set is about £90 if I remember correctly. I had a message from Vince at modelsforsale.com, and he asked me to let you all know that you can in fact at this moment in time get this kit from him from the website www.modelsforsale.com for the princely sum of £36.99. That's right, £36.99 for this set containing both model kits. To put that into perspective, the Tiger alone retails at £39.99, and Vince himself will sell you a Tiger for £32.99. So £36.99 for both is outlandishly good value for money. Now obviously the two aircraft supplied as colour schemes in this particular boxing are quite plain, but there are a few decal sheets available on Hannants now for both of these aircraft, so there are other options out there if you didn't want to finish them like this. But as I say, available right now on modelsforsale.com for the princely sum of £36.99. Last but not least, for this little chatterbox, I've got an interesting development, is that I've been contacted by a company called Airgoo, based in Europe, who are importers for Fanga, and some of you may be aware that I've done a couple of reviews of Fanga airbrushes for my own fun because they're so cheap. Airgoo spotted this and offered me the opportunity to review some of their other equipment from Fanga, and they have sent me, excuse grunts, one of these. This is a compressor, their AG326 model, to review, and also this natty little airbrush set just to have a look at for you. I will get these reviewed in good time and get them up hopefully fairly soon. I'm particularly interested in the compressor because I don't really know how I'm going to review it, but it can be quite a substantial purchase for a lot of people, an airbrush and compressor set. So these are more at the small budget end of the scale, so it could be quite a useful thing to see actually how they really perform and what you get for your money. So that will be coming soon. Another thought I had, that I think I might like to maybe try doing some live broadcasts, just sort of model along and or chat sessions. I'm not entirely sure how to go about doing that, but I know who I can ask. So let me know in the comments if that's something that any of you would be interested in. I do realise though it's going to be difficult to pick a time slot because there's quite a fair sprinkling of people who watch the channel that aren't in the UK. So but if that's something you might be interested in seeing, then yeah, please let me know. And that is it for this rendition of Chatterbox. Very directed, I realise, at the Mustang build, but I just wanted to, as I say, offer a little slightly expanded feedback than just a comment underneath the video. So there you go. The next episode of the More Modelling for Beginners series will be up as well within the next few days. So look out for that if you're following along. Okay, thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. And with all of that said, I think it only remains for me to say, look after yourselves, look after each other, and Genesis out.